everyone, we are the group 4 and we will be discussing about the different art movements. So in order for us to be guided, here is the outline of our report. First is Art Nouveau, second is Constructivism, third is Guiche style, and fourth is optical art. I am Nicole Sunido and I will be discussing about Art Nouveau. So Art Nouveau was highly stylized and antique in appearance. It is an ornamental style of design that has stood the test of the time. In part, this is because it proved that art could surpass the limits of square canvas and extend its reach to everyday wears. So what is Art Nouveau? Let us move forward to learn more about the extravagant style and its lasting effects on the art scene. So, before we define Art Nouveau, let us tackle a little bit of its history. Art Nouveau is a design movement that began in Belgium, grew gradually and spread across 12 years throughout 1980 to 1910. The term Art Nouveau was initially used to characterize the work of the group of 20 artists known as Les Finch in the 1880s Belgian newspaper L'Art Moderne. Next slide. Art Nouveau was a movement born during the period of rapid industrialization. European modernity sprang out of the era of the Industrial Revolution, which was characterized by factory life and mass manufacturing. The movement included a stylized automation and industrialization, even as it celebrated craftsmanship and creative genius. The progressive era was also well underway in the United States. Next slide, please. The uncompromising style of Art Nouveau is often considered a response to the hyper-industrialization of Europe of 19th century. And Art Nouveau did not only thrive in one location or era. It was popular throughout Europe and United States during the same period. In its universal and integrative spirit, Art Nouveau fused fine applied arts from architecture and interior design to book illustration to produce whole works of art, or a German term for Gesamtkunstwerk. Next slide. So William Morris, an English author, designer, architect, and socialist, was the movement's central figure. Among various Art Nouveau stalwarts, including Alfonso Mocha, Gustav Klimt, Henrik Toulouse-Lautrec, and Oscar Wilde, is often said to be the philosophical forefather of the movement. Morris, idolized worldwide for his glorious revival of traditional crafts, stated that Art Nouveau should give people pleasure in the mundane, or that is to say, to infuse everyday life with new aesthetics. Next slide, please. So, let us define what is Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau is an internationally recognized art while having flourished during the 18th centuries, the 1800s, and early 1900s, particularly in Europe and United States. Work in this style have been restored, maintained, and treasured worldwide to this day. Art Nouveau art is inspired by plant forms, nature, took organic subjects, and flattened and abstracted them into sophisticated, sinuous, and flowing motifs. Art Nouveau is an art movement characterized by the emphasis of fluidity of line, geometric forms, asymmetrical compositions, and daring combination of structure and ornamentation. Art Nouveau represented a break for creative tradition that was exotic, extravagant, and ultimately modern. Artists deliberately stated to revolutionize art and created something new, shunning the worn-out historicism associated with classical architecture and design. So following the Gesamtkunstwerk goals, or the whole work of art movement, its objective was to establish a synthesis of fine arts, resulting in a unified and harmonious design across several disciplines. Next slide, please. So here are some artworks of Art Nouveau. First is the Dancer's Reward by Aubrey Vincent Beardsley. So the Dancer's Reward is as the dancer Salome gloats over her deceptively tied prize, the head of Saint Baptiste. Here you can see it. Baptiste Beardsley expresses contemporary fear abundant hair. So, Jam is a trademark for Joseph Bardo Company, manufacturers of cigarettes. In this poster, a prominent female figure against a background of monograms, holding a cigarette in her hand. The woman leans her head backward centrally, and rising smoke forms an arabesque intertwining with her hair and company logo. Next slide please. Next one is the Judith the First in 1901 by artist Gustav Klimt. So one of the day's well-known examples of Klimt arts are embracing woman eroticism is the 1901 piece Judith the First. According to the Bible, the beautiful Judith beheaded drunk a Syrian general Honorius one night to save her Jewish people from downfall. In this drama, the Jewish heroine actually has sexual relations with the general, combining eroticism and death into an inseparable entity. The next one is an architectural design that uses Art Nouveau by Charles Rennie Mackintosh, the Mackintosh Library. So Mackintosh Library is one of his finest work in Art Nouveau architecture. The gallery is supported by covering all columns that are in turn supported by massive beams that create a rhythmic division of room, resulting in an atmosphere of unparalleled harmony. The 13 lights clustered in the center of the room and hung from the ceiling and an atmosphere of unparalleled harmony. So that is all artworks of Art Nouveau, and thank you.
I am Libertas Laraga and I'm going to discuss constructivism. But first, let's talk how constructivism emerged. Next slide please. Constructivism was founded in the early 20th century an art movement by Vladimir Tatlin and Alexander Rodchenko. Constructivism was formed after the Communist Revolution, where it sought new art forms and modes of making art to serve the masses. So the art movement emphasizes building in science rather than artistic expression, and its goal went far beyond the realm of art. Constructivism began with Vladimir Tatlin, a Russian artist who profoundly impacted by a visit Picasso studio in 1913. So in 1915, he wanted to demonstrate his Spanish art in his own. So he created a collage made of metal and wood. This marked the beginning of constructivism, an art movement in which artists were interested in construction. Next slide, please. The constructivists sought to influence architecture, design, fashion, and all mass-produced objects. Constructivists were interested in construction rather than emerging from an expressive impulse or academic tradition. Art was to be built. Next slide, please. What is constructivism? Constructivism was a Russian avant-garde movement that used geometric shapes and industrial materials for social purposes. In constructivism, the art role of the artist was reimagined. The artist became an engineer building tools instead of painting holding a brush. For the constructivists, artworks were part of a greater visual program meant to awaken the masses and lead them towards awareness of class division, social inequalities, and revolution. The constructivists believed that art had no place in the hermetic space in the artist's studio. Rather, they thought that art should reflect the industrial world and that should be used as a tool to communist revolution. So here are the famous constructivist artworks. The first one is the Vladimir Tatlin's Tower. So Vladimir Tatlin's Tower, also known as the Monument to the Third International, was Tatlin's Tower designed the monumental building that was erected in St. Petersburg as the headquarters and monument of Comintern, Third International. It was envisioned a tower of symbol of modernity, built from industrial materials like glass, steel, and iron. Though the tower was never realized, it became one of the symbols of constructivism. That is the first example for us to be able to understand what constructivism is. The second one is Elnetsky Prom Room of 1923. Prom Room is an installation of dynamic art that appeared to be floating and meant to activate the viewer, propelling them around the space. So Elnetsky Prom Room is all about how the viewers reflected on the image that what they see is all about floating. Next one is the Alexander Rodchenkov Books in All Branches of Knowledge in 1924. This iconic constructivist artwork depicts a woman shouting the words and the title of the piece, Sharp Linear Forms, that gives the artwork a sonic dimension. Thank you.
Good day everyone. I am Sean Lawrence Alberta. I will be discussing to you another art movement which is called the Style. Next slide please. The Style, also known as Neoclassicism, which literally means the style in Dutch. It is an art movement which started in 1917 and lasted until 1931. Originally a publication, the Style is an art movement. It was a magazine in which the artists promoted their ideas on art and abstraction. It was a modern art movement developed in the early 20th century, encompassing painting, architecture, and design based upon strict ideals of vertical and horizontal geometry. So the Style soon became a full-fledged movement which advocated a visual language consisting of precise geometric forms like primary straight lines, squares, rectangles, and composed of primary colors. So to fully understand the Style, it is important to know its history. Next slide please. So in 1940, Piet Mondrian visited his home in Netherlands. In the same year, the First World War broke and he was forced to stay there because of the conflict. And another artist named Theo van Doesburg, an artist and a writer who found himself isolated from larger arts movement around the continental world, and he decided to start his own movement. So he's looking for a minded artist to collaborate. And in 1915, next slide please. 1915, Doesburg promoted the Style movement. So at the same year, he met Piet Mondrian and another artist, and they promoted the Style. Next slide please. And in 1917, it was the official date of founding of the Style, and which they established the first essays of the theory and adopted the term Neoclassicism. So the Style is a reaction against the horrors of the World War I. However, in 1921, the disagreement between Mondrian and Doesburg emerged. Doesburg and Mondrian had a falling out because Doesburg began incorporating the diagonal lines into his painting, and Mondrian considered that as an act of betrayal, and that resulted Mondrian leaving the Style movement and established as what he called referred as Neoclassicism. Then Doesburg continued the Style design publication until his death in 1931. However, this marked the end of the movement. Although the Style time period only officially lasted for 14 years, the art movement produced numerous groundbreaking and iconic works in painting, architecture, and beyond. Next slide. So here are the examples of the iconic artworks of the Style. First is the Piet Mondrian composition, the second in red, blue, and yellow in 1913. So this one of Mondrian's artworks in his composition series and represents the height of Mondrian's purity and sobriety in his art. So as you can see there, it composed straight line, rectangles, square, and the primary colors. Next is the Theo van Doesburg Rhythm of a Russian Dance in 1918. He uses only primary colors and rectangles created by straight, horizontal, and vertical lines as a reflection of his wish to construct painting to the most simply forms and colors. So it's significant. This art signifies a Russian dancer that portrayed in the most stripped down fashion. Next slide please. Next is the Theo van Doesburg counter composition at the 5th, in 1924. Then next is example of the architecture and art of the Style, which made by Garrett Redveld's poet Redveld, Scroder House on 1924. Next slide, please. And last is another Garrett Redveld's composition, which are red and blue chair in 1923. As you can see, it uses rectangles, squares, and primary colors and straight lines. So, next slide, please. The legacy of the Gestalt and its influence on other art movements. So as you can see, up until this day, the Gestalt influence has still significant because again, it was used in the Dark Cloak Pro SBS, and it was used as an album with composition of the red rectangles, primary colors, straight lines, and it was called White Strip album titled Gestalt. So that's it. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Riamir Dablada Tabigi and I will be discussing the last topic, which is optical art. But first, I will discuss the history of optical art. Next slide please. Optical art or op art was an international art movement which gained prominence in 1960s. The optical art or op art started to gain popularity in the late 1950s but really focused on becoming a major op movement in the late 1960s. That in 1965, the Museum of Modern Art held an exhibition called The Responsive Eye, which a variety of paintings represented op art was showcased. And this event brought the movement to the attention of the world for the first time. Next slide, please. The term op art is an abbreviation of optical art, and this term came into regular use in the mid-1960s, a term coined by Time magazine in 1964 in response to the work of French Hungarian artist, which is Victor Vasarely, who is often referred to as the grandfather of the op art, and his painting titled The Zebra is widely considered as the first example of op art. Now let's move forward to the definition of the optical art. Optical art or op art is a form of geometric optical illusion that explores sensation through the use of visual effects such as recording simple forms, rhythmic patterns, vibrating color combinations, flowing patterns, and foreground background patterns confusion according to Hans 2022. But sometimes referred as perceptual or retinal art because it creates a visual experience based on how human vision functions. Now let's move forward to the last part of my discussion, which is the artists and examples of optical art. Next slide, please. The first one is Josef Albers. Josef Albers was an American-German artist, one of the leading progenitors of geometric abstraction and considered as one of the most important contributors to color theory. And Josef Albers was best known for his iconic Scholar Square painting, which is homage to the square, comprised of a succession of highly geometric and abstract paintings that considered as invaluable contributors to color theory. The next one is Victor Vasarely, was an Hungarian-French artist who is often credited as grandfather of the op art movement. His painting titled Zebra is one of the earliest examples of the style. The zebras are defined only by the alternating black and white lines that make up the stripes, and the overlapping bodies of the zebras are full of movement and power. Next slide, please. And the third one is Bridget Riley, a British artist who is best known for her dynamic and wide geometric paintings. That her geometric paintings implore the viewer to reflect how it specifically feels to look. And she was the first woman to win an international prize for painting. One of her artwork is the movement in squares. It was an abstract art composed of white and black squares. The last one is Richard Anoshievich. He was the pioneering op art in the United States and was a forefront of the op art movement in the United States. One of his important art is the fluorescent complement. It's a perfectly geometric
To sum it up, first, Art Nouveau spanned around the early 1890s to the First World War. It aimed at modernizing design, seeking to escape the eclectic historical styles that had been previously popular. Art Nouveau is a movement that was committed to abolishing the traditional hierarchy of arts. Second, Constructivism. Constructivism originated in Russia in the early 20th century by Vladimir Tatlin and Alexander Rodchenko. It is an art movement that used geometric shapes and industrial materials for social purposes. Its focus is to create art to awaken the masses and lead them towards awareness of something, may it be the awareness of class divisions, social inequalities, revolution, etc., etc. Third, the style. The style was a modern art movement developed in the Netherlands in the 20th century. Encompassing painting, architecture, and design, the style was founded by Piet Mondrian and Theo van Doesburg in the year 1917. The art is based upon strict ideals of vertical and horizontal geometry. Lastly, optical art. Optical art, found in the 1960s, is a form of geometric abstract art that explores optical sensations through the use of visual effects such as recurring simple forms of rhythmic patterns, vibrating color combinations, moire patterns, and foreground-background confusion. Basically, this art is an abstract or visual art that deals with optical illusion. That would be all. Thank you.